Welcome to Uniquely Loved, a celebration of authenticity and divine inspiration.
Hello, my loves. I have a special treat for you today. I have a wonderful guest. But before we get into that, I want to start channeling energies in support of this message. They are unconditional love, support, acceptance, and so much more, all for your highest good. So please accept if you're open and receptive. And let me introduce to you Heather Hester. She is the founder of Chrysalis Mama, which provides support and education to parents and allies of LGBTQIA adolescents, teenagers, and young adults. She is also the creator and host of the podcast, Just Breathe, Parenting Your LGBTQ Teen. As an advocate and a coach for parents and allies, she believes the coming out process is equal parts beautiful and messy. She works with her clients to let go of fear and the feelings of isolation so they can reconnect with themselves and their child in a meaningful, grounded way. Heather creates a space where growth and shifts can occur through education and empowerment, instilling the confidence that anyone can move through the coming out process with understanding and love. She also works with companies' incentive initiatives to educate and empower their employees. She is a writer, married to her best friend for 27 years, the mother of four extraordinary kids, three of whom are LGBTQIA, and a student of life who believes being authentic and embracing the messiness. Heather, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Nikki. I am honored that you asked, and I'm grateful to be here. So thank you.
Very welcome. So, can you please tell the audience a little bit about yourself and how you got started with all this?
Absolutely. Yes. So I got started with this our story kind of starts about 6 years ago. Um, my oldest son at the time was 16, and he came out to us as gay, and we did not see it coming. We were just blindsided by the information, and for multiple reasons we were blindsided and in shock and very ill prepared. And he, for about the first 18 months of him being out, was very, very difficult for him. He had a lot of self-loathing. He really just spiraled into this really, really dark place. And this is all while having parents, my husband and I, and his three younger siblings, who really supported him, even though we didn't quite understand how to support him and what supports he needed and what supports we needed. We were like, okay, let's figure this out together. And we just couldn't quite figure it out fast enough. And he just kept kind of like, we would get one thing, and then it'd be the next level of danger, or just deep, deep depression, or incredible anxiety. And we had to put a number of really intensive supports in place for him. And about a year and a half through that, he reached a place where he was just kind of good. Like he just kind of leveled out. And it was at that point where I was like, no other family should have to deal with this, because it was hard. It was terrifying. There were moments of absolute just terror and so worried about him. He, the self-harm and the suicidal ideation and suicidal attempts, if anyone out there has been through that, how like that's where your 1000% focus is just trying to get your kid the help they need.
Mhm.
And so we were very grateful to get to this place where he was like just kind of stable. And so that's when I created Chrysalis Mama, and I was like, I need a place to put all this information that I had found, that I'd worked really hard to find, and great experts that I had talked to, and great pieces of information and websites and books and all of that I had found. So became this wonderful resource site that people then started to respond to. And so at that point, I then thought, well, a great way to reach more people and to really get this message of, love and support and just letting people know that they're not alone out there would be to create a podcast, which is all of these things are very much out of my comfort zone, or they were out of my comfort zone at the time. And I laugh now thinking about it, because I'm an introvert. I'm, an extroverted introvert, I guess you would say. But it was very much, I just felt very called and very led. And I just kept, like, every time I was like, okay, this is what I have to do. We're going to do the podcast. And the podcast was amazing. And it still is amazing. And people were responding, people were responding. And I thought, well, okay, like, what do people need? Like, what are people really needing? And that's when I started coaching. That's when I started speaking. And just everything has just kind of organically come up out of this is what the need is. And me being like, okay, you're going to do this, Heather, go do this. So that is a very abbreviated version of our story, but yes, it has been a journey. It has been such an incredible learning experience and a gift. I mean, I could not be, when I think about where we were, if I go back 7 or 8 years ago as a family to where we are now, and I mean, this is in a million years. Oh my gosh, it is so worth every ounce of pain. So.
And you were there to help support him through this entire process. How's he doing now?
He's doing great. Yeah, thank you for asking. He's actually graduating next month from NYU. So, I mean, and I will tell you, I still, every time, we have our Mondays are our days that we talk, which I adore and love so much. And I miss him so much. And I love being with him because our relationship is so different and it's so just real. And we talk about real stuff. I mean, there are times where I'm like, oh, it's a little, maybe too much information. I'm still your mom, but I'm so grateful that, he feels comfortable enough to share those things with me, and that he wants to talk about it and wants to hear my thoughts on things. And oh my gosh, like, what an incredible gift. So I'm grateful, and it's beautiful. And this is another thing and I often forget to say this out loud. But he has given me from day one permission to talk about his story, and very much encouraged me at the beginning. And he's been on my podcast numerous times. But he's also done a lot of, like, he's kind of all of my kids really are my go-tos for, like, what's the word on the street with the kids, right? Like, because our kids are really, they just take everything, right? And they just kind of soak it in, and they're like, all right. And it's super helpful for us as adults to understand. And so that's been my big thing, is just asking questions and being corrected, because they're also not afraid to correct you when you say dumb things. So.
Especially when they're teenagers, or,
well,
who am I kidding? My 9-year-old does that.
Right. I mean, you know what? I think it starts early. You go from being like this brilliant, all-knowing being to literally being like the dumbest human on earth. And it is such a kick to the ego, but I guess it's a good lesson too. So.
So what have been some very common themes that you have found with talking to people that are most needed, especially during the coming out process, or the next part will be a different question, different section, but what kind of support is most needed, really?
I think, and what I have found is that a lot of times parents just need to be heard, and they need to feel like what they're going through is, like, they're going to make it through. They're going to be okay, that their child is going to be okay. And that there are, support systems in place somewhere, right, that they can tap into, that there are resources available for them,
Mhm.
and for them personally as well as for their child, because I'm a firm believer now that there are two separate coming out processes, right? There's the one for the parents, or the family, and there's the one for the child. And there is some parallel process there, but there's also a lot of work that has to be done individually. So, and kind of like you mentioned earlier, I think the biggest theme behind all of it is just fear. And that fear comes from not understanding. It comes from perhaps programming from the way we were brought up, right? Just kind of societal biases that subconsciously are just there.
Mhm.
And so that's a lot of like the deeper work that we all have to go through. And that's even to like being a good ally, even if your kids are not in the community. It's just part of being a good ally is doing that work. So
Excellent. Thank you.
of course.
I had another train of thought and it just went because you kind of answered both already at the same time. So that's good.
Sorry.
Oh no, it's totally fine. I thought it was going to be too much for one question. But never mind.
I love watching you and your process. I was like, what are they saying to her right now?
Keep it going. Come on. Why are you stopping? Oh, listen.
Oh my goodness.
They're always joking around or poking fun to try and help me not take myself or any of my situations too seriously.
Right. Well, and doesn't that help you like relax too a
It
little bit?
does. It
Yeah,
does.
I find that as well, because it's easy to be like, you have something in your mind that you think is how it's supposed to go. And then they're like, yeah, no, that's not.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Let go of that expectation. This is what
Yes,
we're doing now. And hey, have some fun with it. Explore.
exactly. Exactly. Oh my goodness.
And when we're shifting mindsets, that's sometimes the best way to do it instead of let go of the expectations and then focus on the adventure.
Right, right. Because I think it's easy to get kind of caught up in that it's so uncomfortable, right? So then you're focusing on, well, this is uncomfortable. It feels uncomfortable. I don't know what to do. I'm uncomfortable, right?
Well, and that's
Instead
where the
of,
growth happens.
well, exactly. And so, thinking, okay, well, this is actually really cool
Mhm.
because the fact that I'm uncomfortable means some stuff is happening. And I
Yes.
may not be able to like articulate what it is or my finger on it,
Mhm.
but there's some shifting occurring or some growth occurring or, you know, something. So I think that is such a lovely, like you said, like the adventure of it, like the curiosity, just being curious, like, ooh, what
Yes.
is this? Like, what it could it be, And that definitely takes you out of like oh, I feel,
Well,
uh,
yeah, because getting curious is how we get over that fear of the unknown
mhm.
and doing the research instead of, well, really staying in our heads and be like, why is this happening? Or why am I like this? Because I would doubt myself when I was in the midst of depression and all my negative intrusive thoughts and my ideation and everything. So
Right.
that shift is so important, but so hard to do sometimes.
It's so hard to do, especially when you're in the middle of that. I mean, when you're in the middle of like really intense stuff like that, like all the things you just mentioned, it's very difficult to have that piece of like self-awareness to be like, okay, I need to pull myself out of here, because asking the question why, or, you know, typically in that situation is not helpful,
Mm-mm.
right? Or what's wrong with me? Nothing.
Nothing.
Absolutely nothing, right? But that's so easy to spin on.
Oh yeah.
And so I have, those are big ones,
Oh
really,
yeah.
really big ones. So that curiosity, just being curious, be curious, be curious, right?
Yes.
Could be a mantra.
Another one definitely want to put out to everyone is that no matter what, we are unconditionally loved and supported. And we have guides throughout history with the lore from different cultures and different beliefs and everything, who are androgynous, who are gender fluid, who are non-conforming. Um, and I think it's absolutely amazing.
Right. I'm fascinated by this because we were talking about this a little bit earlier, and I think it is one of those things that when you realize, like, ooh, I'm not alone,
Hmm.
I'm not the first, like, right? Like there is actually some groundwork there for you, right? There
Hmm.
is something that you're like, oh, this person, or this being, I can identify with that.
Yeah. And
There's something so powerful in that.
there's divine beings from every faith, every belief, every way of being that are androgynous, or will take either aspect or even shapeshift into animals, plants, whatnot, just to be able to relate to us, because they're completely genderless. Spirit is ethereal. They transcend all of the stuff that we identify with. And
Right.
in my experience, they present themselves in a way that is relatable to us. So we can build up a relationship that's comfortable for us, so we can find our truth.
Right. Isn't that, I mean, it's so interesting because you had asked me that before we started and I'd never really thought about it.
Hmm.
But when you add, like, I had to stop and think and be like, I've never thought of my guides as a gender,
Hmm.
but that's just me personally, right? Like that's my own personal, I have other visualizations or other like feelings
Hmm.
that surround that. Every person is different. I think that's what's so fabulous and just magical about it.
Yeah. And they all love us completely unconditionally. I mean, it doesn't matter what, society or mainstream beliefs or whatever says we have to be. They're like, get yourself out of that box. Tear the box down, tear all those barriers down, be who you are, because you are wonderful.
Right. Right. Yeah. And just, I mean, 100% supported and loved
Yes.
for who you are in this moment, right now. Not like who you're going to be, not who you're growing to be or wanting to be. And I mean, and they want for us what we want
Mhm.
and
And better.
better, right? And they love us wherever we are in our process. And I
Mhm.
think that is also something that's really powerful.
Yeah. And then the belief or the knowledge that even when we felt our lowest and felt completely alone, they were still with us, supporting us, going, go, come on, go, we got you.
Right. Right. Which is just, we want more people to know that, right?
Yeah. I broke down crying when one of my guides told me that. And it was just like, huh?
Right.
I was still dealing with the whole, how am I even worthy of this kind of love and support? And I was like, duh, it's a birthright. You already are. Huh? I don't feel like it. Well, we're going to break that away. Now you
Right.
do. It takes
Right.
time. It does take time, but
It does. It takes time and it's also not, it's not linear growth. So
right.
that's I always feel like it's important to remember all of these things. As much as we would love for it to just be like this smooth, like just everything, right? Yeah, it doesn't work that way.
No, no. Storms come in and, they clear the way for more growth, and it's more in comfort. But again, we have to get pushed out of our comfort zone so we can keep growing, or else we're
Yep.
just going to be like, oh, okay. It's like, no, no, no. Stop settling. You're meant for more. You
Yep.
deserve more because you're awesome. And oh, by the way, you were awesome even way back then. You're still awesome now. So come on.
Even when you didn't think you were, right?
Yep.
Hmm. Even if you still don't think you are, you are.
Yep. And I know
That's
that
the
can be hard to
message.
hear sometimes.
Well, it's hard to accept that
Yes.
if you do not feel that way about yourself, or if you are just learning how to feel that way about yourself. It's hard to imagine that that's possible,
Yeah.
right? So it's just
Yeah.
something that has to be on like kind of constant reminder, constant repeat.
Oh, yeah. And actually, the repeating process of that is how we can change our mindset, anyways. And that's
Mhm.
why affirmations or, something of that sort are so important
Yeah.
because our thoughts are not our reality.
Nope.
They
Nope.
can be changed. And that's,
They can.
whew.
Oh my goodness. A mutual friend of ours just said that to me the other day. We were talking and she's like, just because you think it doesn't make it true, Heather. And I was like, thank you for the reminder. Yes, I know.
Yeah, for a long time, I used to fully believe that stupid little voice that would be telling me that I'm a failure and, everybody hates me and all this other crap.
Yeah,
And
right?
I took a lot of work, but I had to shut it down. And I actually enlisted my husband's help. Be like, hey, I'm thinking this right now. I need some contradictions. Kick it in the butt, please. And he would
Yeah,
be
I
like,
mean,
hey, he would go logic on it.
I love that. Well, that works too.
Yeah, any way that helps, a sounding board that's supportive, or even just playing songs that
Mhm.
inspire or lift you up.
Oh my goodness. Yes. Ah, yes, we've talked about that. One of our favorite things to do, right?
Yes. And I'm channeling energies to help embed these seeds of love and acceptance and hope within anybody who's listening who needs it.
Yeah,
Planting seeds with energy, with thoughts, with words, with our smiles.
exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
So I found a few articles of a lot of the lore that I mentioned, and I'm going to post some of the links in the description for the episode so people can be like, wait a minute, because there are across pantheons, across all the world, there's examples within like the Norse Eddas or all of the Greek and Roman history, all the different theologies, the writings and everything, and it's so cool to read.
Oh my gosh, yes, I can't wait to read them. So I think that's, I'm so glad you did that because I think we need different ways of kind of anchoring in this message, right?
Mhm.
Of really being able to grasp it. And certainly for me, I found, especially early on in our journey, the more that I could read and research and understand in that way was so helpful for me in being able to kind of like, okay, like understand and then
Mhm.
shift. And so a lot of that, there's like all different kinds of shifts, right? Like cerebral, emotional, the whole spiritual, everything. It's just fascinating how it all works,
Yeah.
but
Well,
all equally important.
definitely. And that's kind of funny because the card that I had pulled before our episode was this one, yin and yang, and it's all about finding balance and uniting mind, body, and spirit. So, in harmony. And regardless of how that harmony looks for us, outwardly, it's perfect. It's wonderful. It's who we are. And us being true to who we are is our light.
Mhm.
It's divine perfection.
It is. And you can feel that. You can feel when you are aligned,
Mhm.
when you have that balance and you're kind of like I always think about it as being connected to myself. So when I'm like fully connected, mind, body, and spirit, then it's amazing how things work.
Mhm.
And it, things are not as hard, right? Or this shifting isn't as hard, or whatever it is. But the moment that you fall out of alignment, you can feel that too.
Oh.
And kind of getting yourself back to like, I mean, the way I everybody's so different again, but it takes me a little bit of like, okay, come on, get back into that space and like really being like so, quiet and intentional and just reconnecting. So
Mhm.
I'd like to get to the place where it just, kind of happens like, okay, I'm out of connection, or out of alignment. I want to get reconnected, and it just happens. But
Well,
I'm still working on that.
the more we ground and center ourselves, and for me, it's always been intentionally grounding with Mother Earth and Source or the universe or whatever you want to call it.
Mm,
Intentionally doing that every day to keep getting the nourishment of all the energies, so I can keep radiating without draining myself because I'm always channeling energy for people.
right.
Um, but the more that I did that, the more it anchored in both below and above, in deep into the core of Mother Earth and in the ethers. And I still will come back to the 3D and or find some ego traps that I'm still working on. Um, and some grr moments or whatnot, because we're human.
We're
They
human.
happen. But the
Yeah.
more we consciously stay grounded and connected, the easier that shift back into alignment happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one thing I say that I really love, and I try to keep this in mind, which is, when you're in that grounding process, is to really think about like the things that no longer serve you, or the things that you've kind of absorbed from your external, right? Some of us are very sensitive to that and absorb everything. Like we absorb all the energies, right? So
Yeah.
how do you get rid of those energies? And I love that really works well for me to think, okay, I'm grounding, and I'm allowing this everything that is not for the greatest good, just whoosh, into the earth, and
Yep.
it's then, you know transmuted into something beautiful and necessary, right? As opposed to not serving me, or anybody who's around me. So I love that too. But then the reminder also to, you know stay connected to source as well. As so good. Thank you.
You're welcome. And it just helps us connect with our higher selves or our own soul or however you want to look at it, plus our guides so much easier. And
Mhm.
anytime we intentionally, um, consciously release like the emotions or the energies of, you know what, I feel yucky. What the heck's causing this? Crap, I can't identify it. Okay, you know what? I don't need this. I'm feeling it like pressure right here. So go away. Release, release, release. Or however, whether
Right.
it be in the shower or with words, or even movement. Dance is wonderful.
Mhm.
Anytime we consciously do it, it's again the pattern that we're repeating to rewire the brain. And it's like, oh, I can let go of this. I don't have to carry this burden anymore.
Yeah. It's huge. I mean,
It
it
is.
really is. And I think, the kind of like the underlying theme of all of this is like that being self-aware,
Mhm.
and learning how to kind of cultivate that self-awareness so that you don't spend so much time in that space of like, what's going on? Like, why do I feel this way? And where it becomes faster to be like, oh wait, okay, here are my tools that I
Mhm.
have available to me.
Yeah.
Here are the things I can do to, get myself grounded, connected, right?
Mhm.
It's amazing.
It is. It truly is. And my guides did want me to bring up some of my personal stories of how I have seen them, and felt them and interacted with them. Because when I first started, I could feel, like emotions and energy, and before my vision started coming in, whether it be in the back of my mind with memories. I get mental images or even mental movies that play when memories come to me, or when I'm reading. Not everybody does, but so when I'm like talking to somebody, a memory will pop up and be like, oh yeah, okay, I need to focus. So that's how my visions will sometimes come to me, and it's just like, huh. Freaked me out the first few times it happened too.
I'm sure.
When it was
Yes.
when it wasn't a memory, and it was just like, what the heck is going on? Like, what am I seeing? Why is there a shadow there? There shouldn't be a shadow there.
That's yeah.
And come to find out it was one of my guides. Like, oh, weird. Why do you look like a shadow? Well, that's just how you see me right now, because level of perception.
Right,
And,
right.
and then as my skills evolved, and I kept learning and growing more, um, I could see like flashes of faces or color of clothes if they're given me something to actually see. They're all ethereal, so they could be a blob of energy if they want, or an orb, because that's common, or a scent, smelling flowers or
Great.
cigarettes or cigars or brownies or whatever.
Yeah.
But one of the more funny ones, his name is Mercury, uh, and he's got a sense of humor. Roman god of a lot, and he has shown up as Freddie Mercury.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
And then when trying to scare me to see how I react, he showed up as Freddy Krueger. So I just call him Fabulous Freddy now.
Oh my goodness.
Because no
That
matter
is
how he shows up, he's looking fab or acting fab.
that is awesome.
um, and or he'll show up as a woman. He does take feminine form. Um, One, to see if I'm willing to accept him in another form, um, or just to be like, so can you tell who I am? And it took me a while because testing and everything. It's like, this feels familiar. Who the heck was giving me this feeling? Oh, hi,
That's
Mercury.
interesting.
Loki is another very famous, and modern example, just because of the Marvel movies, and
Mhm.
Marvel got it wrong, for entertainment's sake, of course. But I mean, he's a notorious shapeshifter. Even talked Thor into wearing a wedding dress to pose as Freya to go get his hammer back in
My
one
God.
story. Um, but he even he'll shapeshift into frogs, birds, wolves, squirrels. He even shapeshifted into a mare so he could seduce a stallion, and he gave birth to eight-legged Slipnir. I have no idea if I said that right. I apologize if I messed that up. Um, and that became Odin's mount, his ride, whenever he rides into battle or surveys his domain.
Oh, interesting.
So,
Know that.
so there are so many examples of gender fluidity amongst many of the guides. Well, it's a week later. Those of you who are watching the video will notice the wardrobe change. We had some technical difficulties last week when we were recording. So we're finishing now. And of course, all this will get edited out for the audio portion of the podcast.
Yes.
But
Sorry.
I'm still channeling all the energies of love, acceptance, and, well, everything for your highest good. Okay. When we left off, we were talking about how even there are stories from across the whole world that shows all of the divine beings being gender fluid and being accepting and loving to everybody, because everybody is represented somehow, some way. And that was the biggest point that they were trying to help me make.
Well, it is such an important point, and it's something that is um, tamped down. That's like the word that keeps coming to me. So it must be, I'm supposed to use that word. But we here, here in our media, here in what we, in the United States, and what we are kind of what's readily available, you don't hear that, you don't see that, and it is such important information. And it also kind of goes to that not only is everyone represented, but everyone has always been represented. This
Yes.
is not something that's new. This has been from the beginning of recorded history, right? I mean, and before then too, I'm sure. I have no doubt whatsoever. So it's just taking that, that's why we do what we do, right? Is to like spread that knowledge, to spread that awareness, and that just that permission to love who you are, and know that you are not alone in being whoever you are, right? There you have representation. So
Yes. And Speaking of what's readily available, you have been on TikTok, you have your podcast, um, and you have been such a huge advocate in getting so many different tidbits of information and, hey, calls to change out there. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Yes. Um, yes, I love, well, yes, the podcast was kind of my first, well, not really my first. My website was my first real like start at that, right? Like, here's great stuff I found. Here's where to go find it. And that was kind of level one. And then with the podcast, um, that gave me the opportunity to just really start digging into things and interviewing really, people who were experts, people who had, lived the life, walked the walk, and had so many interesting experiences to share. And that continues to be the case. I'm always just fascinated. And then a few months ago, I had been resisting for a while. And a few months ago, you were one of my big encouragers to quit being a baby and get on TikTok. And oh my gosh, now I'm obsessed because which I know everybody, that's for you. And I think that was part of my fear, was like, I'm going to spend hours of my day on there. But I mean, as we all know, TikTok has a genius algorithm. So it finds, your people, it finds what you're looking for, and then also gives you the opportunity to, learn the opposite, right? Of, the opposite viewpoints of what you believe or what you're looking into, which I think is so important, because it brings us all together. I mean,
Yes.
this is frankly why they're trying to ban it, right? Like, let's cut all the other stuff. Like, fine, there might be some national security risk, but let's be honest. Like, the truth is, it's because we are able to communicate to people that we would never, or communicate with people that we would never typically be able to communicate with, right? And be able to see ourselves and others, and be able to learn information directly from the source, instead of, watered down, or, in ways that it's with spin. Exactly. It is all without spin. And so because of that, I have been able to really connect with people that are like, boots on the ground and right there learning things as they're happening, and then be able to share that, to people who follow me. And it is just such an incredible opportunity, I feel, to be able to really, so sorry about my dogs if you can hear them, just to be able to spread that information, right? So we can work faster and get things done.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of the stories that you have been sharing have been very much about, hey, we need to make change. We need to, you give advice on how that we can make change.
I do. And as you know, this is like super far out of my original comfort zone, right? This is like a move out of but it is something that I've learned that if I am in any way moved to say something or do something, I just do it and go with it.
Mm-hmm.
And regardless of whether it makes 100% sense to me. And that has been such a gift, because as I have seen things, or if I've learned things, I don't even think twice about, getting on there and being like, look, this is what we need to know. Here's the source, right? Go check it out for yourself. And this is what you can do. You can either, donate money, you can go volunteer, you can write a letter, you can, all the different things that you can do to help, because we all can be helpful in some way, right? We can all be part of what's going on in our country, and pick your topic. I mean, my topic obviously is LGBTQ rights, specifically transgender rights right now, because those are the people who are being attacked the most.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, pick your flavor, because there's a lot.
Oh, yeah, there is. And I love how much you advocate. You went from advocating for your children and, ooh, I'm getting a lot of emotion. But there's a whole bunch of guides around me who are very proud of you, and how much the word earth angel is actually coming through right now.
Thank you.
Because you are advocating for people who need it in a way that is loving and inspiring, and focusing on the love and the good is so needed right now.
Thank you. I do, that is something that is important to me, that I stay true to that voice, because it's very easy to get swept up in the anger. And I mean, don't misunderstand, I'm angry.
Oh yes.
And it is really important to me to come at that anger with love and with just like holding space for people, because it is awful. I mean, and when you're in, wherever you are in this, being able to have a space where you can just be like, okay, I'm not alone. And there are people that are fighting for me that I just had no idea, who are, doing whatever they can. Right. And to just, I think it's an important voice to be there, because there are lots of voices, and every single one is very, very important. And this is just, to me, for whatever reason, this is what I'm led to be. So that's what I do.
You make sure that people know that they matter.
They do. Everyone does. And that's so important.
It is
So important. And I think any of us who have, that kind of connects to another thing that you and I are both passionate about, which is mental health. And any of us who have either struggled with that ourselves, or know a lot about it, or have loved ones who have struggled with it, that's another layer of just seeing people and being like, you don't know where people are, right? You don't know what they might be going through. And having that like extra compassion for that, and just kind of understanding, and again, holding space for that, is just so important to me. So yeah, now you have me crying, and I'm like,
sorry.
very, no, it's totally okay. I mean, I think that's, I just, I laugh because for whatever reason, I must be meant to cry a lot of the time, because people are always like, I'm so glad you cry, because then I feel like I can cry. Well, yes, cry away. I am always like, if you need to cry, just come listen to me, and you know that I'm crying with you.
Then you get people like me who used to hate crying, and I've had to learn how to cry and not feel bad about it.
Oh my goodness. Well, that's such a huge growth piece. My husband, whenever he like the look, I can always tell like the breath he takes and the look, and he's the same, like hates to cry. And I'm like, just cry. It is, it is good. But I'm a crier. I mean, I always have been. And I didn't understand for like the first 25 years of my life why I cried all the time. And I'm sure there were many, many layered reasons why I did. But now I'm like, just embrace it. Like, just.
Because you have a ginormous heart. You're very empathetic.
Yes, I feel everything. So it's, and I've learned how to also, protect that when I need to protect that. So that's been a big growth thing for me. Otherwise, I would be crying all the time, which is not helpful.
No, unfortunately, especially in today's society, but
right.
Empathy is a superpower. It truly is.
Yes, and understanding that's what it is extremely helpful, right? And then I can actually tap into it better than just feeling it and being like, what is this? So it's good.
And there's another way that you help people. You wrote a really awesome book that is for sale.
Yes, I did. Yes. Yes, this was my first. It is called The Language of LGBTQIA plus, and it's an ebook that is all about all of the language. Excuse me, whether it's definitions. The first part is all in-depth definitions of every word that we know currently. Now, it is fast changing as language is.
Mhm.
But there's a lot of, what to say, what not to say, phrases that that you hear that are difficult to understand, that I go into detail in describing. A lot of words that a lot of us grew up with, right? Not understanding why you shouldn't use them. So I go into, why this is not appropriate and why the language has shifted from one place to another. So it was a little bit of a passion project. A friend of mine had suggested I write it, and it took me like 6 months to really research it well and put a product out there that I was really proud of. So it is available. Yes. It's available on my website. It's available on my link tree. It's available a lot of places. So yeah.
Speaking of your website, can you tell everybody where to find you?
I can. Yes. My website is chrysalismama.com, and it's CHRYSALISMAMA.com. I thought that, I love the name of my company and my website, but I did not really forward think into the spelling that people would be like, what on earth? So, but that's what it is. And I stick with it because I love what it means.
Oh,
so,
yeah, I do too.
Yeah. So thank you.
I will definitely be putting the links in the description of this episode.
Thank you. I appreciate that very, very much.
Is there anything else you would like to talk about?
We covered some really good stuff. I don't think so. I think we really did a good job of covering this topic and all the ways that you can learn more if it's something that you're interested in and want to know more. So yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. It's been an absolute pleasure. Everyone, definitely go check out chrysalismama.com and Heather's podcast, Just Breathe. And again, the links will be in the description. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nikki.